Lydian can be considered in a number of ways. As a 7-tone scale we can use to accompany major and major 7th chords. As a harmonic system and mode of the major scale. But more broadly, Lydian encompasses a specific musical flavour that composers use to evoke certain emotions and feelings. First, let's consider Lydian in the context of a 7-tone scale. Here I'm comparing Lydian to its closest neighbour in terms of interval structure, the major scale, also known as Ionian. As we can see, the only difference between the two scales is on the 4th degree. The major scale has a perfect or natural 4th. Lydian has a sharp 4th, also called an augmented 4th. If we play out these scales in parallel across the first string, starting on E, we can see that there's only 1 fret difference between the 4th and augmented 4th. But this single difference creates quite a different sound, starting with the major scale. And now Lydian. So that sharp 4th is what gives Lydian its distinctive major sound, as Lydian's tonic or root triad is major. This tells us that Lydian will theoretically work over major chords with the same root. For example, E Lydian over E major. However, it's also worth considering Lydian's 7th chord type. Lydian has a major 7th interval, making its root chord a major 7th chord. For example, we could play E Lydian over E major 7. Now, you'll notice that the root chord of Ionian is also a major 7th, but composers have often favoured Lydian for major 7th chords because of how the sharp 4th colours the chord. In jazz, for example, even the tonic major 7th chord of a major key progression would typically be expressed with the Lydian, such as this example in A major. More generally, however, Ionian tends to be used for the major key tonic, with Lydian covering any major 7th chords that might occur away from it. Some examples, starting in the key of A major, changing from A Ionian to C Lydian over C major 7. To keep things simple, I'm using a box pattern for each scale around the same neck position. Shortly, we'll learn how to play Lydian over the entire neck, using a familiar pattern. Again, in the key of A major, changing from A Ionian to G Lydian over G major 7. Here I'm using a different box based on G Lydian's pattern. Of course, the chord being played doesn't have to be a major 7th for Lydian to work. But this is where your judgment comes in. By training your ears to Lydian's sound, specifically that augmented 4th interval, you'll have a better idea of when to use it in a chord progression. There are backing tracks to help you with this ear training on the lesson page. Lydian also builds extended chords by adding the sharp 4th, along with other colour tones, to the major triad. When the sharp fourth is voiced in a chord, you tend to see it written as sharp 11. Some examples. So when the sharp fourth is voiced in the major or major seventh chord, Lydian is a good scale choice. Lydian can also be seen as the fourth mode of the major scale. For example, F Lydian would be the equivalent of playing the C major scale from its fourth degree of F, containing the same 7 notes as C major. This means that we can use our knowledge of the major scales pattern to cover Lydian, meaning you don't have to learn an entirely new pattern. We can use a simple visualization trick to connect the Lydian root to its parent major scale pattern. Let's say we wanted to play B Lydian. First, we'd locate the root of B on the 6th string. The parent major scale root of B Lydian is F sharp. As you can see, F sharp lies 2 frets up on the 5th string. This is the movable relationship we'll be memorizing. So to play B Lydian, we could use an F sharp major scale pattern. To play G Lydian, we could use exactly the same fret string relationship to find its related major scale root, D. So to play G Lydian, we could use a D major scale pattern. Another way to see it is using what we might call Lydian's first position box. Since Lydian is the 4th mode of the major scale, its first position box is the same as the major scale's 4th position box. So as long as we've learned the major scale's position sequence, we can connect the boxes from that 4th position. When playing through scale patterns, be aware of the position of defining colour tones, such as the sharp 4th in Lydian, and how they relate to the triad tone positions. That's the 1, 3 and 5. For example, the sharp 4th is always 1 fret or semitone below the 5, and 2 frets or a whole tone up from the 3. By developing this kind of spatial awareness, you'll be able to target such tones more confidently. Incidentally, this 1, 3, sharp 4, 5 relationship can be played as a major arpeggio with a Lydian flavour. Of course, once you have the main roadmap, you'll want to try different ways of navigating the scale and connecting the boxes. For example, a 3 notes per string run from Lydian's first position. Descending. Or we could try introducing repetition and omission, such as this rootless G Lydian sequence. And like any scale, we can harmonize Lydian using dyads, or playing 2 notes simultaneously, such as these sequences. Remember that, as Lydian uses the same notes and pattern as its parent major scale, we can essentially reharmonize our major scale licks, or any relative mode of that parent major scale, for use with Lydian. For example, if we were playing over an F major chord, any of our C major, D Dorian, E Phrygian, G Mixolydian, A Aeolian, or B Locrian licks could be used to get the F Lydian sound. Finally, let's focus on how Lydian creates movements of harmony from its interval structure. We established that Lydian's tonic triad is major, taking the 1, 3 and 5 from the scale. If we move each tone up to its next scale degree, we get Lydian's second triad, or 2 chord, which touches on that sharp 4th interval. This second degree triad is again major. In G Lydian, therefore, we'd move from the G major tonic to an A major 2 chord. You'll typically hear this movement over a fixed tonic root. For example, the movement from G major to A major would occur over a G bass. This movement between 2 major triads a whole step apart, with the lower triad being the tonic, is a very common Lydian-based movement you'll hear in music. When you hear such a movement, Lydian is the implied mode. As Lydian is the 4th mode of the major scale, this whole step major triad relationship is the equivalent of moving from the 4 to the 5 chord. And we'd use the same 7th chords for Lydian's 1 and 2 chords as we do the major scales 4 and 5. The only difference with Lydian is that we resolve around the 4th degree of the major scale instead of the 1st. So in Lydian, the 4th degree of its parent major scale becomes the tonic or 1, and the 5 of the major scale becomes 2. The related sequence of triads continues from there. You can try this simple Lydian movement on the open chords of E, A and D by moving the fretted shape up 2 frets. For example, we could effectively continue this sequence through the remaining triads built on each of Lydian's degrees, such as this example in E Lydian. So the main thing to grasp here is that we're still essentially harmonizing the major scale, but the center of musical gravity has shifted to its 4th degree, and its 4 chord, hence 4th mode Lydian. More importantly, you should be able to recognize the Lydian sound in movements of harmony and melody by ear. It might awaken a particular feeling or emotion, and it's these signifiers that you should seek to internalize as you explore the mode. For more help, including backing tracks, visit the lesson page linked in the description. Please also don't forget to like and share this video if it's helped. Cheers.